Hi, hello everybody. Once again, here at our Flashback with Wes Britton YouTube page, we're going into our golden oldies, our golden nuggets, and we're going to present one of my all-time favorites, one of the crown jewels of my career, George Lazenby, the second James Bond on Her Majesty's Secret Service. You're going to hear a lot about George Lazenby you probably have never heard before. And as we'll talk about straight off at the top, George and I both compliment our mutual late friend, he wasn't late at the time, Ron Payne, who set it up. So one more time, Ron, good on you. Thanks so much. So folks, here we go. James Bond himself on Flashback with Wes Britton at YouTube.
Hello, Dave. This is Wes Britton calling in once again from my undisclosed location, and that's perfectly appropriate for this particular conversation because we're about to talk with George Lazenby. Yes, folks, we're talking with a guy who was once James Bond, with a guy who was once Superman's father, but he's had a much longer career than that. This is an actor who appeared in quite a number of films. He even wrote one that we'll be talking about in a little bit here. He was in a number of Emmanuel films. He was a voice for Batman Beyond. And, we'll just see. Well, he was in a Kentucky Fried Movie. We can go on and on and on with his achievements, and we'll see what we can do in our talk today. But before we get started, I want to make one quick shout-out to a mutual friend of ours by the name of Ron Payne. I've known Ron for a number of years, and he's been a friend of George's for even longer. And it is because of Ron's dogged determination that today's interview is possible. So thanks, Ron, and happy holidays to you, and I hope you enjoy the conversation that's coming. So now, ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, say hello to George Lazenby. Hi, George.
Hi, Wes, and I got to say hello to my friend Ron Payne.
Oh, well. Yes, absolutely.
Good on you, Ron.
Where would we be without him?
Yeah, he's very supportive.
Very supportive. Well, speaking of Ron, he sent a number of questions, and I'm not above stealing some of his questions. That's why I sent them to get us started.
I wish you'd have sent me the answers. There you go. Make it easy.
Well, some of them I thought were pretty good because he talked a bit about your early years growing up in New South Wales. How was it you got the nickname the Blue Flash?
Yeah, well, that's to get me thrown in jail, that one. But I was a bit of a rebel, and I still am. You know, I've never understood society for real. You know, I've always been an outsider looking in. And when I was young, I was about 14 or 15 years old. I was working as a telegram boy, and I got enough money to buy a motorcycle. And I think the movie The Wild One was on with Marlon Brando, and that was the first time I went out at night. I'd sneak out my window. I had the mufflers off the bike. It was a Triumph Thunderbird with Tiger 10 pistons in it, so I had a little edge on the police bikes. But I would ride up and wheelie up and down in front of the movie theaters and just make a lot of noise. Never did much harm, but I was in a few close situations with the boys in blue, and it was exciting. I mean, they weren't able to figure out what was going on because I didn't have a registered bike, I didn't have a license, and so it was hard to track me down, so to speak. That was a thrill back then.
Well, you had
that's
kind
the sort of thing I've done most of my life. I've gone to the edge, you know, and I think when you're meant to go, you go. Because I've fallen off bikes at 100 miles an hour, and I can't say I ended up without a scratch, but with a few rashes, and I didn't have a helmet on. I'm not encouraging people to do that, but it's if I should have gone, I should have gone then. I was only 15, 16 years old in the rain with no goggles, no helmet, one eye half open so I could keep the rain out of the other eye. And next thing I flipped over the bike and it threw me, must have been 100 yards into a paddock through the mud and stuff, and I didn't hit anything stationary. If I had have, I wouldn't be here today.
Well, so you were always interested in sports, so you've been a very athletic guy for, forever, right?
Yeah, I have, but I've never really concentrated on a sport. For example, I was born athletic, so I had that on my side, but I never really persevered until I was about 40 years old. I persevered at motocross, but it was too late. I mean, young kids could, they just had faster reflexes and could beat you up so easily. But I won the over 40 championship, and then I went on to win the over 50 at Mammoth Mountain in the expert class. But against guys who were my heroes when I was growing up, who were then, over 50. But I would ride every day and practice every day, and I never did that with any other sport. I did it with karate for the Kung Fu films in Hong Kong. They sent a trainer over there, and I was, 3 or 4 hours a day working out, trying to get up to par with those experts in Hong Kong. They'd make anybody look bad. So and being tall, it's harder to look good on film doing Kung Fu.
Is that right? Why is that? I guess because most of your
opponents
are on the
small. It's gravity. The small guys look better, and the film doesn't. It doesn't tell you how big people are.
How did your military background help you get into action movies? Because I gather you were a world-class sniper.
Well, I wasn't a world-class. I was picked out to be a sniper because I was the best shot in our regiment out of 500 guys. But I started shooting when I was, 6, 7 years old. I'd go hunting with my dad and on bicycles. We'd ride out on bicycles, and I was so young. I was like 5, I think. I couldn't even get up the hill sometimes. He waited for me at the top of the hill. And we'd go down, and he let me shoot with his single-barrel shotgun. He'd throw things up in the air in the end. When I was 7 or 8 years old, I could hit, bottles that he'd throw up in the air in front of his mates. He'd say, "Here, watch my son," and boom. It was just, you got very fast reflexes at that age. And if you know how to use them, you can, and you're steady. I was very steady-handed, and I still am. I was getting my hair cut yesterday, and the barber said to me, "Boy, you can stay still." I think he was pointing out my age. Most old guys who cut their hair, they can't stay still. They're shaking in the seat. But that's, it's always been, it's something that I did naturally, I thought, is fire a gun. And I squeezed instead of pulled triggers, and I knew I could even allow for long-distance wind and stuff, and it just came natural to me.
Did you also teach martial arts while you were in the military?
No, I didn't. That's a faux pas there, because I was into martial arts. From about 15, I was doing judo, which saved my life, I should say, from falls on motorcycles, because the first thing they teach you is how to fall and how to roll, how to land on your back and side, and that's... I didn't go there for that reason. I went there to grapple guys in pubs because, it was, I got beaten up by a judo guy one night in a pub, and he broke my shoulder. But I thought, that's what I've got to learn. And I went into the Army knowing martial arts, but I was never a teacher.
So, folks, that's one more reason. Never trust Wikipedia, because that's what they claim there at the article about you there. Well, how was it that you left Australia and went to England?
Oh, God. That's, it's infatuation or love or whatever you want to call it. But I was going out with a girl that was a little out of my class distinction. Her father was the Governor General of Australia, which is like I don't know what you'd call him here, ambassador. And they lived in almost a castle in Sydney, and she lived in Canberra, and her father was a great cricketer. He opened the opening batsman was Donald Bradman. He was cheesed off because he didn't get knighted because he was a Catholic. And it was his daughter that I fell in love with. And I think she was in love with me, too. And her father was, he just didn't want to have his daughter marrying a second-hand car salesman. So he shipped her off to England for a few months to work with Lord Snowden, Princess Margaret's husband, I think, as a secretary or something like that. And I was pining for her like you can't believe. And I went into the boss one day and said, I'm going to England, because this girl had stopped writing to me. She'd met someone else after about 3 months, and she was very attractive, and it wasn't hard, I'll bet. So I got on a boat, because that's how everyone traveled in those days, on a ship. It took me 6 weeks to get there. We couldn't communicate while I was on the boat, and she wasn't there when I got there. And so I'd gambled on the boat and drank on the boat, and I was out of cash. And I only had a one-way ticket. And I got a job selling cars in London. And then one day, a guy came into the Overseas Visitors Club and said, I just saw your girlfriend, or your ex-girlfriend, he was from my hometown, up in this pub with a bunch of cricketers. It was the Oxford cricket team. They were a bunch of snobs drinking in this pub. And I went in there, and they're all in white still, long pants, whites. And she was right in the middle of them. And I said, I'd like to talk to you outside. And she said, whatever you got to say to me, say it here. And I said, no, I want to talk to you outside. And this guy put his bib in saying, you heard what she said. And I think my fist hit his chin about the same time as he got the last word out. I didn't even think about it. It was like, and he's sitting on his butt in the pub, and I grabbed her and took her out the car, and she ran back inside because I couldn't, as I went round to get in my door, the next thing, this sea of whites coming out of the pub, and I thought, oh, Jesus, I better get out of here. But a few days later, I got a letter from her, and that's how I knew she was working for Lord Snowden, because it was on his letterhead, saying we should be platonic friends. We've known each other a long time, and my boyfriend's doing his exams, and blah, blah, blah. So next thing I knew, we were back together. She moved in with me, and I sold a car to a photographer. Next thing I knew, I was a male model.
That was my next question.
Down in Spain, and fell in love with the girl, one of the girls I was working with. They were gorgeous. So I come back, and she knew straight away there was something wrong, and but we're still friends today. And that was the end of the relationship.
But, well, that modeling career turned out to be a pretty good one for you, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. I got lucky there because they were looking for these rugged Australians, or rugged anybody, because it had changed from pretty boy to rugged, and I guess it'll go back that way again, and it's like wearing bell-bottoms or straight pants. They have to have a change. And I was rugged looking from being brought up in the bush in Australia or whatever, the sun. And I got a job with one of the best photographers because the guy walked off the job, the model that was working with him, because the babies that he had to work with were peeing on him, and he was such a snob. He walked out, and I just went along and did it, and I thought it was fun ducking all this urine. But the pictures turned out great, and 3 months later, when they came out in magazines, every photographer wanted to work with me. So I started off my modeling career right at the top, and never looked back. I didn't even know where the camera was, to be honest with you, and I think that was an advantage. I was just having fun, and then it came through in the pictures.
And how did that lead into acting? Because it was your first film, what, Our Man in Tangier or something like that in 1966?
What was that?
Was your first movie Our Man in Tangier? I was trying to figure out how you got from modeling into acting.
No, I did a James Bond spoof with Maud Adams, of all people, because she became a Bond girl as well.
Yeah, twice.
And I was chosen to be Bond in an Italian commercial. It went on for about a week. We did like 5. And that was the closest I'd ever got to working as an actor. And that was in Milan, I think. We're in Florence. And then Milan. The company came from Milan, and we worked in Florence. It was a very romantic place. But anyway, that's another story. And I went back to London after that, and a friend of mine, who was a male model, had desires to be an actor. And I'd never met an actor, per se. And I said, "Why do you want to be an actor for? Every actor I meet hasn't got a bloody 2 shillings to rub together." And he said, "Well, I just always wanted to be an actor." And then about a year later, he double dated with an agent. And this is what changed my life. His name was Ken Garrity. And he said, "You've got to help me out. My girlfriend's come back into town, and I had a date with an agent because I want to be an actor." And I said, "What do you want me to do?" He said, "Take the agent out." So I did. Her name was Maggie Abbott. And we went to a screening where the Beatles were, the Stones were, because that's how they saw movies in those days. They didn't have VHS, or this is going back a while, CDs. And I was fascinated by all these people. But anyway, Maggie, about a month later, found me in Paris. That's where I was living at the time, modeling there, because I burnt myself out in London. I did every commercial going in London. And meanwhile, I was in Paris working away in Germany, and she called me up when I was visiting this girl that I was, hot on the trail off, and I forgot that she called me. And I went back to London, and I ran into Ken, and he said, "What did Maggie want you for?" I said, "Oh, geez, I don't know. She said she wanted me for a movie, and she wouldn't tell me what it was, so I hung up on her. I was busy." And meanwhile, Ken says, "Oh, you bloody fool, let's go and see her." So we went and saw her, and she said it was the Bond job. And she thinks I've got a shot because the actors were good actors, but most of them were good actors and were insecure in the fight scenes and with the women. And she said, "I know darn well you're not insecure in either of those cases." So
There's a resume builder.
Eh?
There's a resume
builder. That's what got me the job, basically, because I wasn't an actor. They taught me all the acting I learned was through the Bond people, and all I knew how to play was James Bond as good as I could act, which wasn't that great, seeing I'd been at it 4 months before we started the film. And the experience I had was basically testing with other people for other roles. And I was like stand-in, and I had no dressing room because the Bond people were embarrassed to say that I might be the next James Bond. And I had to be quiet about it. Otherwise, they said they wouldn't give me the job, as they had a lot of press releases happening when they chose the Bond if nobody knew who it was.
Oh, yeah.
And it was supposed to be Life magazine cover and all this stuff. And a funny thing happened just before I was announced. The Pope banned the pill, if you look back in that time, and he got the cover. Telling me to be quiet for all I thought. But I got 4 pages inside, so what the hell, in the centerfold. But meanwhile, I ended up with the Bond job. They walked in one day when I had a stuntman laying on the floor, hoping he wouldn't get up in a hurry and want to fight me because I plopped his chin by accident. And he said, he was right. He was okay because he wanted to part in the film too. He's a Russian wrestler, and Yuri, and he would have slaughtered me. I mean, he felt no pain most of the time, this guy. He was really solid. And a great guy to boot because he didn't take revenge on me. But we had a great time, Yuri and I, during the film, and it was a lot of ups and downs, but that was I think, if you're 9 or 10 months on a movie, you have ups and downs regardless.
Well, the legend is that you knocked somebody to the floor, and Harry Saltzman came over and said, "Kid, we're going with you." Is that what happened?
That was the line. And I said to him, "It's about time." And he said, "What?" I said, "Well, thank you very much." And it just came out of my lips wrong again. And, I'd been testing for 4 months, and that had me on ice, so to speak. They were paying me, but they're putting me up in the Grosvenor House, and it was interesting. But I knew nothing about the film business. And that's how I got out of my contract. I signed a letter of intent, but I never signed the contract throughout the whole film. I went through the whole film without signing it because we keep sending it back with this manager guy I had. because he felt that Bond was over. Because
that'd be Ronan O'Reilly.
It was a hippie, yeah, Ronan O'Reilly. It was a hippie era, and he was probably right for that time. Everyone was wearing bell bottoms, long hair. It was a different era. No one wore a suit except waiters. So, I was asked to get them drinks occasionally when I walk into a place with my short hair and suit on. And people say, "Excuse me, waiter, would you give me?" And it was astonishing how times change. I mean, then in the 80s, the greed thing came back, and, it was okay to kill people again, where during the late 60s and 70s, anyone that walked around with a gun was frowned upon. So, it was just that time. Otherwise, I might have been still doing it for another 7 movies, which they had the contract written out for.
What was it like working with Harry Saltzman and Albert Broccoli? Because they were two very different types, weren't they, as producers?
Yeah, they were. I never, ever saw them socially together with their wives, because their wives detested one another. And so Cubby would take me out one night, and Harry would take me out another, and they were totally different personalities. Cubby was, Italian mafiosa type, and Harry was like, a Jewish entrepreneur. He wanted to get the deal. That was it. But I got along with Harry better than I did Cubby, because Cubby never opened up. Harry would open up to you and say, I've done that, and I've done this, and this is what's going to happen if you keep it up. He'd give you information. He was also managing Michael Caine at the time, and he put Michael and I together at his house so Michael could tell me the ropes, what it's like being famous, etc. And I didn't learn much, I got to admit. We played pool and stuff together and just chatted about odds and ends. He probably thought, poor you. But he was a much wiser guy than I was at the time. And Harry had him under. He also had Olivia Newton-John under contract, and she was Australian. I blew it with her the first night. She said, "Hi, I'm Olivia. I'm Australian." I said, "So what?" And that's the kind of I was thinking. So what? What about that? What are you going to do? Anyway. I was falling in every pitfall in the business. I didn't know how to handle the business, and I paid for it.
Well, one of the legends of working on Her Majesty's Secret Service is that you and Diana Rigg had an interesting relationship. Is it true she ate garlic every time before you had a kissing scene?
I'll tell you how that happened. The first time the press were allowed on the set was the love scene between Diana and I towards the end of the movie in Pinewood, England, and they had a set all ready to go, and the press were allowed to be around the set taking pictures while we were doing the scene. And Diane knew about press more than I did, and she was sitting across the other side of the restaurant, or commissary, whatever it's called, and she stood up in the middle of the restaurant and said, "George, I'm eating garlic. I hope you are." But that's how that started, because we're going to do this kissing love scene. But, there was no smell of garlic. That was just a fun line of Diana's, and the press hooked onto it and said, "Diana Rigg eats garlic before love scene." And that's how that came about. But we had a great time together, Diana and I, considering how far apart we were as far as actors go. I mean, she was experienced and well thought of, where I was, wondering what I was going to do. Meanwhile, we met after, the Bond film, and we're still friends, the last I knew.
How about with Peter Hunt? I gather he was kind of a difficult director for you.
That was a funny scene. Oh, gee. Peter was it was because of Peter, I think, that I got the part. I mean, in the end, because I went into, cut a long story short, I went into Harry's office with this guy, Dyson Lovell, who was the casting director. And because I got into his office, with stealth rather than reason or appointment. I was standing at his door when he was talking to Harry on the telephone. And he said, Jesus, there's a guy standing at the door now. And Harry said, bring him over. And all Dyson said to me, he put his hand over the phone, and he said, who you? And I just said, I heard you're looking for James Bond. I had my Rolex flashing and suit, and I'd had a haircut where Connery got his hair cut, because I'd been thrown out of the casting once. I couldn't even get up to see Dyson. And this was my second go-round. And meanwhile, I cleaned my act up, and he took me over to Harry asking me what my life story was. Got in the office, and Harry says the same question with his feet up on the desk. And so I said, he can tell you very arrogantly, because I just told him. And I walked over and looked out the window. And he was on the phone as well, by the way. So he put down the phone, put down his feet, then stood up and asked me to sit down. So I immediately got his respect by not taking his gesture of pointing at the seat, sit down. And then he called up Peter Hunt and said, when can you get back to London? I got someone here I want you to see. And Peter said, 4 o'clock tomorrow. But he didn't ask me. Then he said, be here at 4 o'clock tomorrow and see the director. I said, I can't be here. I was shitting myself. Excuse the French. But I was keeping, a tough image. And meanwhile, I said, I can't be here. I got to be back in Paris. I was about to bail out of that stage. I thought, these guys are ruthless, tough. I've never met people like this. So Harry says, well, what are you doing in Paris? I said, I've got a job there. He said, how much they paying you? I told him. He said, Stanley Chappelle, he was the accountant at the time. He said, go and see Stanley. He'll give you a check for that amount and come back tomorrow at 4 o'clock. I thought, oh, Jesus, I better do it. So I did. Yeah. And then my agent, or agent-to-be, Maggie, said, how'd you go? I said, they gave me a check for 500 quid to come back tomorrow. He said, what? And she couldn't believe it. They said, they've never paid anybody to come back tomorrow. I said, well, they did me. I got the check in my hand. And so that night I went looking for an acting coach, would you believe? Sure. And that's when I ran into Ronan O'Reilly. And he was hysterical. He thought it was funny when I told him the true story that I'd never spoken in front of a camera in my life. So I went back the next day, and this is why Peter Hunt comes into the picture, because I had met him first. I went into Peter's office, and I leveled with him. I said, Peter, I'll never be an actor. I'm sorry. Here's your 500 quid. And he was laughing hysterically. He said, they just told me to get my butt back here to see you. You fooled the most ruthless man on the planet that you're an actor. He says, come on, we're going over there, and if you stick to your story, I'll make you the next James Bond. So we went out the door, and as soon as I got in the room with Harry had done his homework and said, he's a bloody clothes peg. Get him out of here. Meaning a model. Clothes peg, not a clothes hanger. Clothes peg, he told me. I was about to go over and belt him one. And he said, get him out of here. And Peter said, no, I want to test him. Cut a long story short, they tested me at Harry's place, and then I finally got to testing in the studio as a ringer, just to give me experience. And finally, I was still there 4 months later, and they said, we're going with you. He said, get lost. And for a while, to keep low from the press, go to my travel agent, get a ticket anywhere you want. So I went and got a ticket to the south of to Spain. Then they found me in Spain, some press guys. And I went out of that hotel and went over to the south of France. And I was lonely there, and I called up the Australian girl, and she was on her way over, and they'd called me to get my ass back to London. And so I met her at the airport and told her I'd be back, but I never came back. I was swept into the Bond role.
Is it true that you came up with the line at the beginning, this never happened to the other fella?
That line is true, because how it was happening, I was doing my own stunts. And, jumping out of helicopters, 20 feet off the ground and whatnot. And I was getting some pain. I also was climbing over a wall in London at a scene that they chopped out for some reason and pulled my shoulder out of joint. And I was thinking, this never happened to the other fella. I bet you this never happened to the other fella. I bet you the other fella never had to do this. I was saying that all the time, referring to Connery. And they said, no, he used stuntmen all the time. And I was saying, oh, God, and then they'd make me hang out on a cable, which was down the mountain, the real cable for the cable car. And I'm saying, and then someone said to me, you know why you're doing all your stunts? Peter Hunt will get 2 shots if he kills you. Because I'll find another Bond and you'll do it all over again. Because nobody knows who you are. I said, oh, now you tell me at the end of the movie. So I was just finished that scene on the beach, and Peter said, say that line of yours. And I didn't realize that they'd been listening to me. And I said, what line is that? He said, this never happened to the other fellow. So I said it, and that's how it came about.
Oh, yeah, that's a perfect lead-in right there. That was just absolute great timing.
Yeah, well, it was Peter's idea, but my line.
Well, I understand that Telly Savalas was interesting offset. Did he wipe you out at cards or something like that?
Oh, yeah, Telly was a character. He went around with a clan, a bunch of Greek mates of his. I think his brother and his stuntman, he's stand-in. He would, they'd sit there and play cards in between shots. I was never invited, but how did this happen? I got a whole bunch of money in my briefcase from the per diem they give you every day. I never got to spend any. I'm up on the mountains for 6 months, so I'm in there about 3 months, and Telly's not taking much notice of me. And one day I had to open my briefcase for some reason, and he saw all this cash in there. And he said, hey, you play cards, kid? He called me kid all the time. Wish I did now. But anyway, he said, you play poker? I said, no, but you can teach me because that's young and naive. He said, come on over. So by the time I'd gone through about half my money, Harry turned up on the set. And he noticed what was going on. And he said, he tapped me on the shoulder, said, let me take your place. And Telly said, no, Harry, because Harry knew how to play poker. He'd lost his shirt playing poker and given up on gambling. He was a gambling addict. And he still was, but he'd gamble on movies and stuff. I think he lost all his money on Technicolor eventually, just gambling on that. But meanwhile, Harry sits down, gets all my money back, hands me the briefcase, stands up, and says to Telly, leave my boy alone. And I didn't know I was being, conned out of my per diem because, I was coming through the hippie era, and money wasn't a positive thing. We always frowned on people who flaunted money. And I was, being very conservative about my money. And, if somebody wanted it, take it. But that was that's another reason why Bond was bad. I mean, we didn't kill anybody. We didn't, our whole mindset was peace and love. No. It wasn't real peace and love, mind you, but we thought it was.
Yeah.
There was a lot of loving going on. There was no diseases going around that'd kill you,
Not then.
Parts of your body might drop off, but nothing would kill you. So we just let it all hang out.
So what did you think you were going to do once you decided you weren't going to do James Bond anymore?
Well, Ronan had plans of me just being an independent actor, and he was telling me Clint Eastwood just got $500,000 doing a spaghetti western, and I was going to get like $100,000 for my next movie. And he said, we'll get all your Bond money back in a year. You don't have to spend 7 years playing this role that's dated anyway. We did think it was dated. I mean, in fact, it was dated. And all of a sudden we went back into the greed era. And, how much stuff you got, the guy with the most toy wins type of thing era is back now. Not to everybody, but to the majority of society. And we thought society was bad, because all societies lead to war and all religions lead to war. And that was our attitude towards life. So I was easy talked into, and this guy, Ronan O'Reilly, he launched all those English pop groups. He was the man. he had that Radio Caroline ship in the middle of the North Sea there.
Pirate
radio. English radio had 1 hour of pop music on Saturday morning. And Ronan O'Reilly, if he hadn't have launched that ship, we'd have never heard of all those groups. That's how they made their record sales and money, to come out of England. So, I mean, he was, he was an advanced thinker. So I was taking notice of this guy. I mean, he introduced me to John Lennon and people like that. I mean, I was impressed.
Yeah, I would be impressed by that.
Huh?
I would be impressed by that.
Yeah, and, so I was just listening. I didn't have a mind of my own. If I did, and today, and I knew and I could look back, I would have done more Bond movies. That's all there is to it. And now I understand the business. I didn't know the film business at all. I didn't know business at all, except how to sell a car. Some poor bugger that didn't want it. That was my, the best thing I could do as far as business.
Well, it wasn't too long before you did a film. What would you do? Write and produce and everything else for the Universal Soldier?
Yeah, that's right. Well, that was ego. I thought that when Rona was still slightly involved in my life, and we got Cy Enfield because he directed Zulu, and he was the best director we knew around the place. I almost got Orson Welles. He pulled out because he thought I had the characters wrong, and I had a meeting with him, and he flew over from Spain to meet me, and we sat down and discussed it, and I almost got Jimi Hendrix to do the music. I mean, and then he died on me. So it ended up a failure because there's too many fingers in the pot, too many people writing and rewriting and messing with the script, and it wasn't strong enough to be a hit. And we didn't get Jimi Hendrix, so we got another group that wasn't commercial enough. Just everything went wrong. And then I found, because I was in charge of that movie, I got it made. But after that, I couldn't work. I mean, someone would call up the people that were hiring me and say, hey, don't forget, he's on a Bond contract, and you could get sued, and it would scare the hell out of him. So I was stuck without a job for, about 15 months. And I went to the movies one day and saw a Bruce Lee movie, and I saw on the bottom of it, distributed from, such and such place in Singapore. So I went out to Singapore. I was out of money. I went on a charter flight. And, sitting in coach, charter flight. And when I got there, I got along with the press there, with the public relations in the Hyatt Hotel. And the girl there, I can't think of her name today, God love her, but she helped me out. She got me a flight to Hong Kong and a room in the hotel there, and I met the vice president, Brian Bryce, who gave me a free room. And then I went out to Bruce's studio and a bus. I just had no money, and cash was not, I had no cash left. And so when I got there, I saw Raymond Chow, who was a big producer now and was with Bruce, and I said, I'm George Lazenby. I went out there without an appointment, just asked at the gate, where's Raymond? And I told Raymond who I am, and he said, come on over to my office. And when I got to his office, he rang Bruce, who was down in the editing room doing one of his movies, editing one of his movies. And he said, Bruce, I got George Lazenby here. He wants to meet you. Will you come on up? And he said, no. And Raymond, you could see the look on his face that it wasn't good. And he said, I'm sorry, he doesn't want to meet you. And I didn't know Bruce and Raymond weren't getting along at the time. But I left, and I was back out on the bus stop waiting for a bus to go back to town and back to London. I was heading back to London, and next thing, this little Mercedes pulls up and says, get in. And I looked underneath, and there was Bruce Lee. And Mr. Hong Kong, curled up in the back. And Bruce in the one seat and his secretary. And there was no room in there. I said, where will I sit? And he said, told the secretary to get out, and she got out, and I got in, and she sat on my lap. And here I am going along with Bruce, and there's a typhoon starting. Bits of corrugated iron are flying around, and this cop comes up on a motorcycle and says, "You've got to get off the road." And he looks and he says, "It's Bruce Lee." My God, they were fascinated with this guy. And so he gave us an escort to a restaurant that was nearby. And as soon as we walked in, I still haven't spoken to Bruce, really. We had a bit of a joke in the car, but hadn't spoken. And Raymond Chow called up and wanted to know, and Bruce called them, and we all met together in this restaurant. There's about 10 of us around the table, and I remember Bruce saying, he said, "This is what I think. If I had a fight with any of these people around the table, this is how long it would take." And he pointed to his wife, who was a bit of a karate expert. 3 seconds. Blah, blah, blah. Raymond Chow, 1 second. "And how long would it take me to beat you?" I said, "Not long." He said, "Thank you." And so, meanwhile, he said to Raymond, he said, "Give George $10,000. And Raymond said, "What for?" He said, "I'm going to do a movie with this guy. And I want to get him back to London because I had a pregnant lady there who I later married. And after he gives the baby's born, he can come back and do a movie with me." And then Bruce and I hung out for 3 days. And he was telling me how he's not going to kill me in any of his movies. And I'm going to be the white guy that he's going to track the white business through and blah, blah, blah. We had a lot of plans. And he'd call me up at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, "Blah, blah, this is what I want to do in this scene, blah, 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 blah. What do you think? Call me back, clunk." I'd wake up saying, Jesus. The guy was full of energy all the time, night and day. And then I had lunch with him, and he said, "I got a headache." And when we had lunch, we'd have a screen, and he'd be back at the restaurant because people would bug him. So we had to have a screen around us while we had lunch. And then meanwhile, he said, "I got a headache." I said, "Well, don't worry about tonight. I'm leaving tomorrow." He said, No. I said, "I'll be there tonight. I'll be there tonight. And Raymond will be there too." So Raymond and I were sitting there waiting for Bruce, and he didn't show up. So I said to Raymond, I said, "What's his number? I'll give him a call." He said, "He's not at home. He's with his girlfriend, Betty Ting Pei." So I called Betty Ting Pei. Raymond gave me her number, and she said, "He's asleep. I can't wake him up. I don't know why." I said, "Well, I'll call back in 5 minutes. If you haven't woken him up, I'm calling an ambulance." So I called back, and she said, "I called the ambulance." I said, "Good." And I went off to my hotel, and when I got in the room, the phone was ringing. It was the the Hong Kong press. And they said, "Bruce Lee's dead. What do you think?" Oh, I went, no. That was a shocker, because I didn't think of anything. I just said, good guys die young, I guess. And then I went back to London, and then Raymond rang me, and I stayed the next day for Bruce's, a couple of days for Bruce's ceremony and whatnot. Then I went back to London, and Raymond rang me. He said, "You got $10,000 on mine. You have to do a movie with me now." And that's how I started doing Kung Fu movies. I did 3 of them with him. Anyway, Wes, you must have enough material now.
Oh, my goodness, more than enough. Of course, I haven't got to half the questions that I was going to ask.
Yeah, they're the questions most of them ask. You've got the lot. And thanks, Ron Payne and Wes, for everything.
Well, we thank you very much. And maybe sometime we'll come back and talk to me about Batman and Superboy and Emmanuel. And
yeah. All right. I think they all want to hear about Bond.
Well, you never know. I think you've had a significant career. Well, we appreciate it very much,
folks
George.
Out there listening.
Yes, sir. And thanks again to Ron Payne. Back to you, Dave.
Ron. Bye.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.
Cheers, Rose. Bye.
Well, we sure hope that you enjoyed this week's exciting episode of Flashback with Wes Britton. But hey, while you're at the Artist First page, why not stop by the Flashback with Wes Britton archives and see all of the years and all of the interviews we put there?
why not stop by the Flashback with Wes Britton Facebook page? Drop a note. Give us a line. What did you think of our shows? Come to think of it, why don't you just send me an email? I'm at Spywise, SPYWISE, all one word, all lowercase, spywise@verizon.net. Tell me what you think of the goings on here at Flashback with Wes Britton. So, till next week, happy trails from the folks at Flashback.